Thinking about buying your first home but don't know where to start? Well, join me today in today's two-part video series as I explain 10 first-time homebuyer tips that I personally share with my clients to give them the best possibility of finding and securing a home they love. What's up guys? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Passelt with Team Powerhouse Realty. And today's video, I'll actually be doing a two-part series with the second part dropping a week after this one. So stay tuned for that. But until then, we're going to cover 1 through 5 of my first-time homebuyer tips. If you find value in this video and would like to support me and my channel, the easiest way and the best way to do that, aside from, just transfer me like a couple grand, is to like this video, subscribe to the channel down below, and share something that you got out of this video in the comment section below as well. But enough of the fluff, let's get right to it. Being a first-time homebuyer is exciting, but I know it can also feel overwhelming, especially when you see homes being purchased at an average price of $382,000 for a single-family detached home, and with available, accurately priced homes flying off the market in days or sometimes even hours of being listed. With real estate trends like those, you might be tempted to make an impulsive purchase that can hurt your financial goals and keep you paying a mortgage well into retirement. Nobody wants that. Trust me, you guys, it's worth doing this the right way. And that means buying a home that you love and doesn't hurt your future money goals. You may be thinking, yeah, that'd be great, Mark, but where do I even start? I'm so glad you asked. I've put together 10 tips for the first-time home buyers as they tackle the home buying process. Put these into practice today so your first home is a blessing in the future, not a burden. Tip number 1, pay off all debt and build an emergency fund. Owning a home is expensive, much more expensive than renting, even if your monthly house payment will be similar or cheaper than your current rent amount. That's because when you own a home, you're responsible for all of the maintenance and upkeep costs, and those can add up fast. So before you seriously think about buying your first home, try and make sure you're debt-free and have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses in place. When you get into a home with no payments besides the mortgage and have a nice big emergency fund, you'll have the cash to pay for the huge expenses that suddenly come your way. You'll be able to love the life you set up for yourself because stress and worry won't be a part of the equation. Now, once you're debt-free, I want you to stay debt-free. So as you're shopping for your first home and getting excited about decorating and filling it with new furniture, please be mindful of your budget. The spender in me knows that it's easier said than done. When my wife, Tunde, and I moved into our first home, I had so many visions for what our place could look like. It was hard for me to accept the fact, actually, that we could only do so much at a time. But I knew our future money goals were more important than us spending all of our savings at the furniture and home stores. Not to mention, at the time, it was a 3-hour drive to come here to where I live currently to buy the stuff and then bring it back. So you might have some empty rooms for a little while, but your budget and your future self will thank you. And if you find yourself thinking, oh well, I'll just put it on credit, just stop right there. Non-income producing debt is not advised. Plus, taking on new debt in the middle of buying a house could actually delay your approval for a mortgage and make you miss out on the perfect home, so behave yourselves. Tip number 2, determine how much house you can afford. Before you get emotionally attached to a beautiful home, check your monthly budget to determine how much house you can afford. You need to leave room in your budget for other things, so make sure your monthly housing costs, including your taxes, insurance, that sort of thing, are going to be no more than 25% of your monthly take-home pay. By working with a mortgage specialist or other lender, they will assist you to pick a number that's in your ballpark. But don't forget that property taxes and homeowner insurance will affect your monthly payment. You'll also need to factor those numbers in before settling on a maximum home price. Since property tax rates and the cost of homeowner insurance vary, check with your lender and insurance company for estimates to calculate just how much house you can afford. Tip number 3, save up a down payment. If saving up to pay cash for the total price of a house isn't reasonable for your family's timeline, try to save for a down payment of 20% or more. Then you won't have to pay for the mortgage default insurance, also known as a CMHC insurance, which protects the mortgage company in case you can't make your payments and end up in foreclosure. If 20% just isn't an option, then you can save as little as 5% for a down payment and just pay the CMHC insurance over time. Although mortgage default insurance costs home buyers between 2.8% and 4% of their mortgage amount, it does allow Canadians who might not otherwise be able to purchase a home access to the Canadian real estate market. Without it, mortgage rates would be higher as the risk of default would increase. Lenders are able to offer lower mortgage rates when mortgages are protected by mortgage default insurance because the risk of default is passed along to the mortgage insurer. CMHC, which stands for the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Council, I think, made changes to the insurance criteria starting July 1st, 2020, which will include higher credit scores, lower debt service ratios, and limit down payments from non-traditional sources. I'll cover all of that in more detail in a future video, but for the purpose of today's video, I'll just briefly discuss the GDS or gross debt service ratio and the TDS GDS, or total debt service ratio, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terms. GDS and TDS ratios are used to calculate a home buyer's credit eligibility by comparing annual income to debts and ongoing housing costs. A borrower's GDS ratio is a calculation of housing expenses, including mortgage payments, property taxes, utility costs, and condo fees, if applicable, as a percentage of annual income. The TDS ratio is a calculation of all GDS ratio expenses plus other debts, including your car payments, credit card expenses, or loan expenses, as a percentage of annual income. So once I create the video covering all of the changes in greater detail, I'll include a link in the description down below, as well as there'll be a little card pop up somewhere up here in the corner, which you can click on and it'll take you right to it. So let's move on to the next tip, and that is save for closing costs. Along with your down payment, you'll also need to pay for closing costs. If you're a first-time home buyer, you may be wondering how much it costs to close on a house. On average, closing costs range from about 1.5 to 4% of the purchase price and are the legal and administrative costs that you'll need to pay when your house closes. Your lender will give you a specific number so that you know exactly what to bring on closing day. These fees pay for important steps in the home buying process, which include property transfer tax, which is calculated as a percentage of the purchase price of your home. All provinces have a land transfer tax payable on closing, with the amount varying in each province. Home buyers in BC, for instance, pay a provincial property tax when they buy a home, and this tax is charged at a rate of 1% on the first $200,000 of the purchase price and 2% on the remainder up to and including $2 million, with anything above $2 million being taxed at like 3%. Another thing is legal fees and disbursements. You can expect to incur, I think, a minimum of about $500 plus applicable GST and HST on legal fees, but obviously it can go up from there and does go up from there, which account for the preparation and recording of official documents. The other thing is title insurance. Today, most lenders require title insurance to protect against losses in the event of a property ownership dispute. This is purchased through your lawyer or your notary and costs about $100 to $300. PST, which is a provincial sales tax on the CMHC insurance. Though CMHC insurance itself is financed through the mortgage, PST on the insurance must be paid in cash at the time of close. And there are additional costs involved with the home buying process, and I will do a recap of all of those at the end of the second part of this video, which will be in about a week from now. And I'll also include the last 5 tips for home buyers. And you can find a link for that video once it drops, again in the card up there somewhere at the top right of your screen, as well as in the description down below. So on to the next tip and the final one for today, and that is to get pre-approved for a loan. Once you're confident you have enough cash saved up to pay for your closing costs and the down payment, you're ready to handle the rest by talking to a mortgage lender. You should get pre-qualified for a loan and take the extra time to get a pre-approval letter before you start your home search. Especially now with COVID, people really don't want someone unqualified even going into their home, so it's even more critical to get that done. Pre-approval shows sellers that you're a serious buyer, which is a great way for the first-time home buyers to get ahead in a competitive market. To get pre-approved, your lender will need to verify your financial information, such as your proof of income, your taxes, what debts you have, all that sort of stuff, and submit your loan for preliminary underwriting. If you live a debt-free lifestyle, you may need to find a lender who believes in debt-free home ownership and will work with the first-time home buyers who have no credit score. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up here for today to keep the video length down a bit, but I hope this has been educational for some of you, and I look forward to sharing the rest of the tips in next week's video, which will be dropping next week. Hope everyone has a fantastic week. See you next time.